Welcome, dear listener. Tonight, we journey back in time to the wide-open plains of Kansas in the year 1920, where the sun sets slowly over golden fields, and a hard-working farmer prepares to end another peaceful day. So settle in, get comfortable, and allow yourself to drift into this quiet evening from long ago. The summer sun hung low over the endless fields of Kansas, painting the sky with shades of amber, gold, and soft purple. It was the year 1920, and on a modest farm just outside the small town of Abilene, Farmer Samuel Whitaker wiped the sweat from his brow and leaned against the wooden fence that bordered his wheat field. Samuel was 48 years old, with weathered hands and a gentle face shaped by years of hard work beneath the prairie sun. He had spent the entire day harvesting wheat alongside his two horses, Charlie and Duke. Now, as evening approached, the world seemed to slow down around him. A warm breeze swept across the fields, carrying the scent of dry grass and fresh earth. Samuel removed his straw hat and gazed toward the western horizon, where the sun was beginning its long descent. For Samuel, this was his favorite time of day. The morning belonged to labor. The afternoon belonged to endurance. But the evening belonged to reflection. He walked slowly toward the barn, his boots crunching softly against the dusty ground. The barn doors creaked open as Charlie and Duke entered their stalls, already knowing the familiar routine. Samuel filled their feed buckets with oats and gently patted each horse on the neck. "Good work today, boys," he said quietly. The horses snorted softly in response. Outside, the sounds of the countryside began to change. The busy songs of daytime birds gave way to the gentle chirping of crickets. In the distance, a meadowlark sang its final melody before nightfall. Samuel stepped back outside and looked toward the farmhouse. Smoke rose from the chimney. His wife, Margaret, was preparing supper. The farmhouse itself was simple. A white wooden structure with a wide porch and a rocking chair that had belonged to Samuel's father. The house had stood on the Kansas prairie for nearly 30 years, surviving droughts, storms, and the passing of seasons. As Samuel walked toward home, he passed through his vegetable garden. Rows of corn stretched toward the sky. Tomatoes ripened in the fading sunlight. Green beans climbed carefully built wooden stakes. He paused to pick a single ripe tomato. Its warmth from the day's sun reminded him of something his father had once said. "A good farmer doesn't simply grow crops. He grows patience." Samuel smiled softly. He missed his father. The screen door creaked open as he climbed the porch steps. "There you are," Margaret called warmly. Margaret Whitaker had been Samuel's wife for 25 years. Her brown hair had begun turning silver, but her smile remained exactly as it had when Samuel first met her at a county fair decades earlier. "The stew's nearly ready," she said. Samuel washed his hands at the kitchen basin while Margaret ladled beef and vegetable stew into 2 bowls. Fresh bread sat cooling beside the stove. They ate quietly, not because they lacked conversation, but because, after 25 years together, silence itself had become a language they both understood. After supper, Samuel carried his chair onto the front porch. This was the true beginning of his evening. The sun had nearly disappeared now, leaving behind a sky painted with brilliant orange and deep blue. Far across the prairie, fields of wheat swayed gently like waves on a golden ocean. Margaret joined him with 2 cups of coffee. For a while neither spoke. The prairie itself did all the talking. Grass rustled softly. Crickets sang. A distant owl called from somewhere beyond the fields. Samuel rocked gently in his chair. He thought about the changes that had come to America. Just a few years earlier, the Great War had ended. Automobiles were becoming more common. Cities were growing larger every year. But here in Kansas, evenings still belonged to the same things they always had: the setting sun, the whisper of the wind, and the comfort of home. As darkness slowly covered the land, Samuel noticed the first star appearing overhead. Then another, and another. Soon the entire sky was filled with countless points of light. Without city lights to dim their brilliance, the stars stretched endlessly from horizon to horizon. Margaret pointed upward. "Look," she whispered. A shooting star crossed the sky. Samuel smiled. "When I was a boy," he said quietly, "I thought those were lanterns carried by angels." Margaret laughed softly. "What do you think now?" Samuel leaned back in his chair and considered the question. "I think," he finally answered, that some things are better when we don't understand them completely. The night air had grown cooler now. A gentle wind moved through the cottonwood trees near the house. Far away, coyotes called to one another across the prairie. Samuel closed his eyes for a moment. He could remember nearly every evening of his life. He remembered sitting beside his father on this very porch. He remembered bringing Margaret home for the first time. He remembered holding his children when they were young. Now many years had passed. The children had grown and moved away. His father was gone. The world itself had changed. Yet somehow, beneath the Kansas stars, everything still felt exactly as it should. Margaret rested her hand on his. "Thinking again?" she asked. Samuel nodded. "About what?" He looked out over the dark fields. "About how lucky we've been." Margaret smiled. "Yes," she said quietly. They sat together for another hour. No clocks ticked. No automobiles passed. No telephones rang. Only the sounds of the prairie remained. The wind, the insects, the distant calls of nighttime creatures. Above them, the Milky Way stretched across the heavens like a river of silver light. Eventually, Samuel stood and stretched. "Time for bed," he said softly. Before going inside, he walked to the edge of the porch one last time. The fields lay silent beneath the moonlight. His barn stood peacefully in the distance. Charlie and Duke slept quietly. The wheat swayed gently under the stars. Samuel removed his hat and held it in his hands. For just a moment he simply stood there, breathing, listening, remembering. Then he smiled. Tomorrow would bring another sunrise, another day's work, another evening beneath the Kansas sky, and somehow that knowledge brought him peace. He stepped back onto the porch. Margaret opened the screen door. Warm light spilled into the darkness. Together they entered their home. And over the endless Kansas prairie, beneath a sky filled with stars, another peaceful day quietly came to an end. Good night, and may your dreams be as peaceful as a Kansas evening in 1920.